Hello everyone, this is David Blair, the Crosshairs Trader. What I want to go over today in this educational video and description of an edge is the breakout. And I use the TradeStation platform, and I've developed a workspace specifically for the TradeStation platform, and it is available to Crosshairs traders. It is not only a signal workspace, in other words, it not only fires signals, it also is an educational workspace, teaches how to spot continuations of trends, reversals of trends, and when stocks may or may not be extended. Let's begin with a few stocks, and you'll notice here in on your screen that I have in the TradeStation workspace that I've developed a radar screen that fires all of our signals. I won't go into these and what the colors mean and everything, but basically gives our signals. Our signals will fire also on the charts, and I have a certain number of stocks that I watch also, and they're already pre-programmed into the workspace. So I'm going to take a few examples here, and we're going to discuss breakouts. Basically, all a breakout is where there's been price compression. There's been some development of back and forth, and a lot of indecision among investors and traders about where a stock should head, whether it should head higher or lower. And that can develop a good area of resistance and support, and you can see that here with Yahoo. We're going to begin with the weekly charts, and you're going to understand here in this video why I like to trade breakouts, and I think by the time we're finished you'll understand. We're going to look at weekly examples, daily examples, and then combinations of both weekly and dailies, which are my favorite. And I've developed indicators to find these. But right now we're just going to look at the charts. We'll come back and look at the indicators here. That's not as important as understanding the price. And what we want to see with the price is a nice long compression, and all breakouts are different. All compressions are different. What I mean by that is some stocks will go sideways for weeks, some only a few weeks. Some will break out of their box, as I call it, stocks in a box. They'll break out of their box, they'll come back and test, or as in the case of Yahoo, they will not. Sometimes they will fail. So they're all different. I simply look for a nice price compression, and then I look for the breakout. And as in the case of Yahoo, you can see here at the end of 2012, they had pretty much a year-long consolidation on the weekly chart and broke out and took off. Let's look at several other examples. KKD had a nice box back here in 2012. Pretty much all of 2012 broke out. Actually broke out and went sideways for several weeks and then started taking off. LEG had a much shorter sideways movement. I look at this as a nice continuation. Some would look at this and call it a pullback. That's fine. But I like the nice little box here, and then it continued to run higher. LUV had a couple of boxes here. This is what I like to see with a continuation of trend. We had a nice breakout of a box back there in 2012. Had a nice trend. And then much of 2013 we went sideways, and then we broke out here in about November of this year, October, November, and really took off on LUV. Google along a trend. I like to look at trends, and the box broke out here and continues to run higher. That's one I talk about in the morning videos. And MAT, here's an example of MAT breaking out a couple of times in a box, went sideways, then broke higher again, continued to run in that trend. NCR, another good one that really went consolidated all of 2012, broke out a little bit, came back to early part of 2013, then broke out nicely and ran. And again, these are weekly charts, and you'll find that you'll get an opportunity a lot of opportunities on the daily chart to follow these breakouts and trade them off the daily chart. And I have signals for those, which we'll see in just a moment also. NNN, you see where NNN went sideways, consolidated for months, almost a year, broke out, then consolidated again into 2012 and 2013, then had a nice strong run there. NOC just had an explosive move, broke out of that consolidation here in May of this year, and then pulled back, tested that breakout for a couple of weeks, and then just continued to run. SYMC, nice breakout again. We look for a run, a sideways move, multiple weeks of compression, and then a breakout. And you can see SYMC is now consolidating again. UHS. By this point, you should begin understanding why I like to look at breakouts, especially these on the weekly chart. They can be explosive. UHS October 2011 through around January 2013, December 2012. Sideways, started moving a little bit up in this box with higher lows and then took off. GT went sideways, broke out of a box back here in around July. It came back and tested that breakout and then took off. This is one that actually tested that breakout. Some do, some don't. HAAN, nice sideways move, then broke out, had a nice run, pulled back, didn't do much, but built a nice support area here, developed a box, then broke out. You'll see in a moment why I've flagged these boxes. We actually have signals that catches these. HBI just trending higher, had pretty much consolidated 2011 into 2012, then started breaking out with a nice out of a box and then just took off. That's HBI. HCN had a nice short move here for about a month or so, from June, July 2012, then went sideways up until around January 2013, and then broke out and took off. HTZ, same, had a nice move here. Really didn't do too much. Consolidated here, broke out a little bit, came back, gave a lot of that back, and then in September, October, November, December 2012, built that box and then took off back in another box again. VIAB, now this is an example of a stock that broke out of a box here. You can see it. Broke out, came back and tested, then took off. And then in November into December of 2012, came back and tested that breakout and then took off. Some of them will do that, some of them won't. UPS also, you can look here, if we stretch this box out, came back and also tested after that nice box. I look at this as a continuation of trend. We had a nice trend up, went sideways, and then came back, tested, and then broke higher. And then there's not too many of these in the current market, and hasn't been for quite some time, but we also catch them to the downside. You can see, like with CLF, we had a nice box that developed into 2011 into 2012. We broke that down. Then we went sideways again back here into 2013 earlier this year, broke down, and now we're back to the back and forth, some consolidating, even got some higher lows sitting in. We may be starting to work on a trend higher on CLF, but you can see we also can trade the downside boxes when they break to the downside. Let's take a look at a few of these with our signals actually on the chart. So if we take a look at Cliff here, now sometimes our signals will fire. You know, they're programmed into a computer and they've got to be exact. But we'll look for crosshairs traders. We'll look for breakdowns on the weekly chart and then possibly a signal on the daily chart, which we'll see in a moment. So sometimes we'll have the breakdown without the signal on the weekly chart. Sometimes we'll have it with it, and it will show up at the same time or within a few days or a couple of weeks on the daily chart to agree with the weekly. You can see the DCH fired here. DCH is simply the signal that fires on the weekly that says look for a corresponding signal on the daily chart. DCH, sometimes you can actually trade the DCH off the weekly, or you may have to wait for it to set up on the daily. But what I like to see is at least a signal or a breakdown like we see with CLF. Let's take a look at a few more here that we just went through, and you can see the signals where they fired in these boxes. KKD actually fired a few signals in this trend. You can see where it had the box that we discussed and then broke out, and then we had another breakout in the trend on KKD. LEG, you know, had that nice move up, consolidation, then fired the DCH for the breakout. LUV, same thing. In one of them we did not have a signal, but I'm sure we had some signals on the daily chart in here. Broke out. And then you had actually the DCH here on the weekly chart for LUV on the last breakout of the box. Google, one I've been discussing in the mornings. We've had a couple of signals on Google. Broke out of this short little box here. This is more of a pullback, and then created a box and broke out and continues to run higher. NOC, here was our signal on NOC. Now, not all of them will work immediately. Some of them will fail, of course. These are just signals. They do not predict the future. And NOC had a potential breakout here, could not hold, came back. And then on this DCH, it actually took off and worked as we just discussed. This proves to you, although not all signals will work, when they do work, they can more than make up for any potential losses you may have had previously. SYMC, another one we discussed. There's your DCH signal. HAAN, same. Actually had a couple of signals here on HAAN, if you recall. Nice breakout there. Pulled back, broke out again. And then finally, the HBI, you can see here. I won't go through all of the ones we discussed in this video, but you can see there. All right, let's take a look at some daily examples, and we will start with SLB. SLB on our daily charts, you can see where we had some consolidation back here in July, August, September. And then we took off out of that box. Then we created another box and took off again. Now we're actually reversing a little bit, but you can see in this previous trend where we had a couple of boxes and then broke out. WYN, one that I went over in the morning videos the last couple of months. We waited on it to break out of this box and continue the previous trend. That's what I like to see. FRX was one that had a nice long consolidation here, then broke out, developed another consolidation, shorter consolidation, then broke out nicely again, had another consolidation but went up on news. I forget what that news was. Maybe it was earnings. But anyway, you can see where it had a nice long consolidation a couple of times. GNTX had a nice consolidation and then broke out, and it's consolidating again right now and attempting to break out. DECK, DEC, gapped up on earnings, I believe, went sideways. We talked about this one in the morning videos, then took off. Nice move on DEC. PFE, again, all we're looking for is the boxes. Boxes and breakouts, boxes and breakouts. Explosive moves can occur. PFE, couple of times we broke out. CLR, I don't know why I've got DEC in there twice. CLR, Nice sideways move back in July, August, September of this year. Broke out. Took off nicely out of that. Actually broke out, came back, rested a little bit, and then really started taking off. LVS, another one. Multiple times took off. You know, stocks will have a tendency to run and rest, run and rest, run and rest. The rest is the consolidation. The run is that explosive move outside of it. And you can see where LVS actually went sideways again, and it's broken out for a third time in this latest trend. Now, when we go back and take a look at our signals, you can see where even on our daily chart, you can see where our signals fired. So let's take a look, go back to SLB. You can see where our signals fired, our itch. We call that an itch because it's in the crosshair. Our stock is in the crosshair, fires our signals. Here's WIN breaking out of that box and firing our signal. Here's FRX. Broke out of this box, but then developed that new one. Nice narrow box here after breaking out, and fired another signal. DEC, I won't go through all of these. We had a few signals back here, but a nice breakout in the box. On DEC, CLR, same. You can actually see when these start trending, not only is this a breakout of a box signal, the itch, that is, it can also be one that fires in a trend and continues the trend, and you can actually see where we had another small box fire. And again, they don't all work. They don't all work immediately. They don't all become just explosive moves. Sometimes they test. Sometimes they go back down to the bottom of the box and then start working. All of them are different. Now, the last ones I want to talk about are combination trades, and I'll just leave the signals on there. This is when the daily and the weekly charts fire signals at the same time. And let me get my signals from the weekly chart on my daily here. What we have is that DCH on the weekly. I have programmed this workspace that I've developed where the signals on the weekly will show up also on the daily chart. And you can see where oftentimes we'll have our daily and our weekly signal fire at the same time. And these are my favorite because they can really be explosive. This is one I went over middle of November in the morning videos. You can go back and watch them on StockTwits and see. We discussed this one. Just had an explosive move. DCH on the weekly. Itch on the daily. Nice box here on the daily, breaking out of that trend on the weekly. WFM, before they had earnings, and we do not trade through earnings, we had that nice DCH on the weekly, and oftentimes the DCH will fire on the weekly and then we'll wait on the corresponding signal on the daily. It may take it a few days, a couple weeks or so. MSI, you'll have to go back on MSI a while. And you can see I like this one because I remember trading it, but we had a breakout of a box, went sideways, fired a couple more, just didn't do anything, and then, and you never know which signal is going to give you the big money. Then, along with that DCH that fired on that weekly chart, you can see then we had a huge move on MSI back there in 2012 into 2013. NOC, here was that DCH that we talked about earlier on NOC, and then here's the DCH on the weekly, on the daily, showing up from the weekly, and then you can see it broke out the same week, pulled back, and then broke out again, and just had an explosive move on NOC to go along with that weekly. PLL, same, we had that DCH fire, went sideways, then fired our daily signals. RTN again had that DCH itch signal, broke out here, did it a couple of times after breaking out on this weekly chart back here at the early part of 2013, and then just broke out and continued to run higher for us here. CAR, Another combination trade. You can see that here, beginning of end of 2012 and 2013. Now we had that recent breakout here, itch, that corresponded with the breakout on the weekly. And earlier, remember I said that we don't always have a breakout signal on the weekly. Sometimes they fire, sometimes they don't. But we at least want to see a signal on one of two charts. But if you go back and look at end of 2012, you should have some signals here that went along with that weekly DCH, and there we go, broke out of this box here and just continued to trend higher with our daily chart signals along with the DCH win. WYNN. This is a recent one we discussed in the morning videos. Broke out with the DCH on the weekly and also gave the signal here on the daily out of a box. And FDX, we had discussed this one back a few months back in October. Fired that DCH on the weekly chart. You can see it here. And we had one back here. We didn't sell off, but we didn't do much. Just built a long box, broke higher, built a new box, then really started taking off on FDX. So that's why I trade boxes. That's why I look at the big charts, the weekly and the daily charts. That's why I look at a combination of trades on both the daily and the weekly charts. I believe it's a good edge. I believe historically it has provided a means by which we can trade this confidently. And what I really like about it also, on these breakouts in these trends, we know when they're not working because they fail the breakout and begin to reverse, and we can get out. Your best technical analysis will tell you when you're wrong, and will reward you when you are right. Got any questions about Crosshairs trading? Crosshairs trading strategy, reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. David at thecrosshairstrader.com.